Well, good morning, everyone. I don't think it's afternoon where anyone is, but if you are, good afternoon. My name is Jeremy Stockwell. I am an account technology strategist with Microsoft, and I actually cover enterprise accounts primarily in the New Orleans and Louisiana area, although I do have some accounts that I cover in the Houston area, and I'm actually based out of New Orleans. So I want to talk today, and as Ron mentioned, COVID-19 has fundamentally changed the way that we operate within the workplace. And for many of us, that workplace is home. For me, I've been working from home for a few years now, but for a lot of folks, it's something that's new and presents its own challenges. What I'll say is when we initially launched Microsoft Teams, it was something that we were looking at to help bridge the gap because for the first time in the workplace, prior to COVID-19, we had 5 generations that were potentially in the workplace. And so we were trying to figure out how do we bring all these people together where we had a lot of pieces and parts in different places within our portfolio of software and services. Teams was that answer. And so I'll kind of go into a little bit of what Teams is, just to kind of level set everyone, make sure kind of clear it's on what the purpose behind Teams is that we have from Microsoft and the development we're putting into it. Some of the things we're putting out about how do you work securely and efficiently from home using Teams, and then go into the security pieces of it. Previous speaker John, I think, may have touched on a few of these pieces that cover the Azure aspect. Well, a lot of those translate over into our SaaS applications like Teams. So I just want to make sure that we cover some of that from a Teams perspective. So first and foremost, what is Teams? It's not just chat and collaboration. It's not just messages and calling. It's not just apps and workflow. It's the hub for all of those things. The biggest thing that I say is, people say, well, I'm transitioning from Skype to Teams, or I'm transitioning from Jabber to Teams, and they see it, well, it's just a new instant messaging and group chat functionality. It is so much more than that. It is a hub for teamwork. It brings everything together into one place. So I'm not having to switch between, an internet browser, a chat window, and an app window. It's all in a central hub and can be put together and can be configured within the Teams window. And that can be either web-based or it could be app-based, and it's even mobile. It has all the integrations within Office 365 applications. And you can create line of business apps using things like our Power Platform, our Power Apps, Power Automate, analytics through Power BI. All of those things can be embedded into Microsoft Teams. All of this, again, because Teams is part of our Office 365 and I'll say our Microsoft 365 package, it comes with all of those enterprise-grade security and compliance capabilities that we bring and that we manage. We invest over billions of dollars annually in security, and we do that because we understand that the privacy of your data and the security of your data and your applications is the first and foremost thing. Because what our CEO Satya likes to say is, we run on trust. If we don't have your trust, we've lost. So we invest a ton of time in making sure that we've built out those security and compliance capabilities to gain that trust for you to collaborate and use the Teams platform and our other platforms. So if you look at it, I'm sorry, I should have built the slide, but you can see the different things. I actually want to highlight this. If you're on Teams today, one of the things we have coming, and this is the continued improvement, the continued development that we're putting into Teams right now. For most individuals and for most companies, it's just a 4-box view. Well, obviously we're using Zoom on this one, and as Ron said, I'll be working with him to turn this into a Teams Live event later on. We're slowly going to roll out the 3x3 view that I'm showing here. I actually have an internal preview on my end that I've started to see, and it looks really nice. A lot of users have been asking about, how do I get the custom backgrounds? Because up to this point, you can only do a blur background. That should have been rolled out. These are just things that, with the changing environment, with working from home, working remotely, having kids in the background or other things at home that you don't want to see, being able to do those custom backgrounds more than just a blur are things that we've heard and things that we're prioritizing to rush out and to roll out to the end user community. And so what can teams really do for your business, your organization? So, like I said, it transforms workplace collaboration. It's not just IM and chat. It is something where it brings together a full shared workspace where you can chat, you can meet, you can create, you can collaborate, and you can make decisions as a team. It's no longer one-on-one or one on a couple. You build this out in teams and groups, and that's where all your content is organized. It's organized by team, can be a project, and you can stay on top of that within the project. Um, the one thing I'll say is that one of the studies that we highlight in some of our white papers and things that we publish out is that it takes an average person 23 minutes to regain productivity after an interruption or being distracted. Well, imagine you're in Skype or some other window and that pops up, so you have to go address that because that's the first thing that happens, and now you have to go back to the other window to figure out where you left off. I mean, imagine 23 minutes throughout the day. If you could gain just half of that back, how much more productive you could be. Streamlining your business. So you need access to documents, data, applications, and be able to do that within a single location. And that's when I say Teams is the hub for that. It's a true platform that you can plug in your apps, you can plug in your services, and you can integrate all of the tools for your line of business that you need to into Teams. And it could be third party. I know I saw in the chat window there were some other questions on integration into our Azure services. We have a whole host of integrations with third-party tools and first-party apps that we've built out on the platform and published, and third-party apps that integrate into the Teams platform to make you more productive and to streamline your business and your operations. Again, it's something that with Teams, it's not just for the knowledge worker. We built Teams so it can be used from anyone at the C-suite level all the way down to frontline worker that's on the factory floor. Nowadays, top of mind, the teams on their phone and get notifications, get information quickly and easily because we've heard people are doing, doctors and nurses doing 12-hour shifts, they're seeing multiple patients, all these things. Imagine just having the capability in their pocket as walking around to grab that information as they need to, and not having to go back to a shared workstation or somewhere else to get all of that in between seeing patients. And again, one thing I'll highlight, and I'll keep highlighting on this, is the security and compliance. We run, regardless of the size of your business. If you're, a thousand, tens of thousands, 100,000 person organization, a few hundred, you get that enterprise grade security and compliance with Teams and with all of our Microsoft 365 solutions. So you think about it, kind of highlighted this, running your business on Teams, you can run projects. Think of a project as, for us internally within Microsoft, in my role, my project is my client, or the clients that I have. So I have separate teams built out for each of those clients where I can collaborate with an Azure specialist. I can collaborate with a data specialist, and they're all part of that team who are supporting that client. And all that information and all those things are pulled together in that one location. I don't have to go to email to find information that this person sent and then forward it on to this person, make sure it's in there. And as new people on board, I just add them into the team and they can see everything that's happened before them. It's very easy for them to ramp up and see all of the documentation, all the information that's been shared before they came on board. We know that's something that's very critical with businesses, is getting people on and getting people ramped up as quickly as possible for them to become productive in their roles. And Teams helps out a lot with that by providing that persistence in the chat history, in the documentation, the versioning, and everything that comes along with that team ecosystem. One of the things about process, and I'll kind of use the example that's, I don't know if it's relevant to most people on the call, but I feel it's relevant to some, is like a sales cycle. So you have, something you're trying to sell to a customer. Well, what is a way that we can handle that in Teams? Well, you think about it, I've got the field account manager, account executive, and they've got something from that customer that says, hey, this customer wants this. They can go straight into Teams, into that team that they're a part of. They can put in that request saying, hey, customer A wants to do X, Y, and Z. And all of a sudden, you get the team who's part of that customer or supporting that customer to put together a draft, put together the specs, put together the price, whatever that needs to be done, and collaborate on it in real time. If they need to meet, they hit a meet button, and they could be on video conference or just audio conference, talking about those things in real time as they're collaborating in the same document in real time and seeing those changes. You can then tie in a workflow so that into that team, so that once that bid is put together, or once that quote or that proposal, whatever is put together, it kicks off a workflow that goes through whatever levels of approval it needs to. And then once that approval hits, a notification is sent back to the team saying, yep, it's ready to go. And that goes back to that account executive who is interfacing directly with the customer for them to share it. But it's all done, again, within a single place, within a single hub. And one of the other things is driving cultural transfer. Who hope may have read about or know about some of the cultural transformation that we've gone through within Microsoft as a company in the past 5 years since Satya took over. So the things that he's brought to the table as being not, don't be a know-it-all, be a learn-it-all. Always be open to learning more, making sure that you're always asking questions, that you're making sure you're being inclusive. Inclusion is one of the pillars that we have within our company, and Teams helps to bring that inclusiveness. You can now bring all the right people into a team to make sure that they're all included on the conversation, that they all have a voice in that conversation. There's also things built in like you want to make sure that someone does a great job or a team does a great job. You get that out to the field. You make sure that they have it, that people know what a great job they've done. You can do things like praise a team, praise an individual within Teams that goes out to the organization, goes out to the business, however you want to send it. But that goes a long way when it comes to employee morale and employee satisfaction. Again, engagements with your team, making sure you can create there's different ways that you can create announcements, making sure that the employees or the right audiences get access and see what you're trying to send out, and make sure that they are aware of what's going on. That's where it comes back to, it's a C-level down to the frontline worker. You can make sure that I've got a big announcement that comes out with a big banner. Anyone who goes into that team or is part of that team is going to see that, and they're going to know, I need to read this because it's important, or I need to read this because it's something new that's just happened that I need to be aware of. Other things like GIFs, pictures, memes, I mean, all these things, it helps lightens the mood when it comes to, the way that we're all working today. Obviously, we're stuck at home. I'm here at home. My wife is working full time. I'm working full time. We have 2 kids under 6. It's hard. And sometimes, the stress of being able to do your job, be a teacher, be a nanny or a daycare worker, all at the same time, all on the same day. Sometimes seeing a funny GIF just lightens the mood, and a lot of those things help. One of the other pieces that teams bring together is the ability for the C-levels or for the organizational leaders to engage with the companies, with their businesses and with their companies through things like town halls, through things like Teams live events, through things like just, smaller collaboration and chat with individual groups. But it allows the employees and allows the people of those businesses and those organizations to feel connected to those leaders, and to feel a sense of ownership in what the company is trying to do and what your missions are, to make sure that those leaders have the ability to share it. And then back into that, I mean, we have on the back end the ability to record all these things and put them into Stream, which is our also part of Microsoft 365, where I can't attend a live event. I can go back and I can always watch it later. It's not something where I have to, I've got an important customer meeting I got to take, and at the same time, my CEO decided he wanted to schedule a town hall. That's not a problem. It always goes back to Stream. You can listen to it later. And if you need to follow up, you can follow up afterwards. And I think, as we all know, like any collaboration platform, Teams is bringing people together no matter where they are. We have folks that we're trying to work with on a client. They have offices in Europe, and so it brings everyone together in one place and allows them to chat, collaborate, meet in real time to get the things done that they need to get done to be productive and to move their businesses forward. So this was something that we put out, and I have some resources in a slide at the end that talks about ways to work efficiently for home, things to keep in mind when it comes to how we should operate from home in this type of, new normal, I always call it. Um, and I've got a couple slides on this that I'll share before I get into, the security aspect of it and how Teams keeps it secure in this type of environment. And the first thing, the tip we have is just communicate. You're at home. Obviously, you're isolated from the rest of your team. If you're used to being in an office, you're used to being around your entire team, can just drop into someone's office or someone's desk just to chit chat. You don't have that at home. I think that was a big wake up call for me when I went and now I've been with Microsoft for 3 years. I'm working from home exclusively, but I lost the ability with my old job just to sit down and kind of vent or talk about and brainstorm on certain ideas with my peers. Well, Teams gives us that. So make sure you're communicating often. If you need to just have a side conversation, do it. You can still do it through Teams. Say, hey, I need to talk. I need to get something by you. You can do that through Teams. Hit Meet Now, call over Teams. It's all there. It's available. Again, as I mentioned, make it fun. You think, GIFs, memes, just sharing pictures. These are all things that can help lighten the mood, and especially in today's time, I think we all need a little bit of that. I know I get stressed out with everything that's going on today, just at home, having to be home with kids and work. But sometimes it just takes a little bit of that to make things feel like, all right, everything's going to be okay. This is not going to be forever. Things will eventually get back to normal. And again, you can use this for, like I said, meet in the lunchroom, the water cooler, wherever, the coffee machine, whatever you used to do in the office. Spin up a quick team meeting to meet now and just say, hey, just want to chat. Gives you the ability to do that from a single hub, from a single environment. And below in the next few slides, there's, and I'll get these out, I think Ron's going to distribute them. There are some links that help provide instructions and guides on how to do some of these things and some of the best practices. Collaborate. Obviously, with Communicate comes collaboration, and with Teams, you can do things in real time. You don't have to wait for someone to get into a document to edit it. We bring in things like the back end of SharePoint document libraries and bring it right to the forefront of Teams, so that if I need to go into a Word document and add something while someone else is in it and they can see it, I can get on a phone call with them really quick. They can look at it and they can say, yep, that's good. They know it's done and it's saved and they know exactly where to get it. All of that can be done in real time with co-authoring. You do things like whiteboard that can be used within Teams. All of those pieces are there for you to make sure that you're getting your work done as quickly and efficiently as possible so that you move on and be productive to the next thing. Obviously, everything right now is digital events, broadcast video. I talked about Teams live events. We have increased, I believe the Teams live event is now up to 10,000. Teams meetings can actually support up to 250. We're rolling out the 9-person video view. We're slowly rolling, we're going to be working on more to that. We've rolled out custom background images, upload your own images, some of those things that users have been asking for, given that they're using Teams more and more and seeing what they need. And if you have an idea that you would like to see or you'd like to get to our team, say, hey, this is a feature you need to work on that's not there now, look up Teams User Voice. Teams User Voice is a place where you can go and you can vote on if someone's already mentioned it or submit an idea of your own. And that's what our product group looks at. They say, what is trending and what is some of the biggest topics that we want to see from a Teams perspective, or from any product for that example. It could be Windows, it could be Office, it could be whatever you want it to be. There's a user voice channel for all of it, but for Teams, they're going to look at what's gotten the most votes. I'll tell you, the custom background had a ton of votes, and again, once everyone was working remotely, our product group said this is a priority, we need to pick it up. We run with it, and it was released and deployed. Should have been deployed worldwide by today. It was calendar supposed to be done this April, so hopefully it's all completed by today. And again, quick meetings, virtual huddles. If everyone's available, let's say, hey, let's get on a quick video chat to make sure that we're on the same page of whatever we're talking about. And you don't have to schedule it through Outlook or through the calendar. You can just go into the channel, you hit the Meet Now button, everyone in that channel gets notified that, hey, there's a meeting going on. They just hit join and they join in. It's not like I have to go to Outlook. I have to create a calendar invite. I have to add the right people. I have to send it. They have to get it. They have to see it. They have to join. It's quick. It's easy. And everyone is included in it. And inclusion, I think, is one of the key things, and it's one of the things I know I personally am trying to make sure that we're doing in this day and age, is making sure that everyone has the ability to provide their input when you're in an online meeting. One of the things that you need to make sure is that, just like in an in-person meeting, you're respectful. You're respectful of their opinions. You're respectful of their attendance, and you're respectful of what they have to say. So things like turning on your video, that goes a long way to make sure that people, when I'm sitting across the table from someone in a meeting, seeing their facial expressions, seeing how they react to a certain idea or thought, that you don't get that in an online meeting. But if you have the video up and people can see you, that helps, and that helps maybe get rid of some of the anxiety, some of the other, issues, blockers, whatever it may be within the team when you're trying to get something done, because you don't have that face-to-face interaction. Well, with Teams and video chat, you have that. With Team Video Chat, you have that. One of the other things, and it's something that, can bite us all, is the mute button, right? Well, I've heard different things say leave the mute button off, leave the mute button on, and for different reasons but what I would say is just, and I mentioned this before, make sure that when you're in a meeting, when you conclude, everyone has the ability to provide their input. The more input you get, the better off a decision, a product, or whatever it is, or whatever the goal of that meeting was, the better off the outcome of that meeting is going to be. And then all of these things can make sure you're monitoring chat. Because I'm presenting here, it's a little bit different audience. I don't have the chat up, so I'm gonna have to ask, pull that up later to look at some of the questions, or ask Ron to read some off. But when you're in a Teams meeting, especially when it's a smaller group where it's just collaborating on an idea or whatever, monitor chat. It's very easy to have the chat window up to the side to monitor, to make sure that if someone's calling you out. And then one of the things is the @ mention. If I mention an individual in a meeting chat, it gets their attention, it pops up, gives them a notification. They go, oh, I should bring this up during the course of conversation, make sure everyone has the ability or has the chance to hear what I have to say. And so one of the 4 tips, and this is something, I've got the URL posted, and I think I have this as one of the resources in the last slide. 4 tips that we've put out as Microsoft working from home with Teams is make the most of your meetings, right? Meeting time, just like during when you're in the office and before the whole work from home and work remote started during the COVID pandemic, you want to make sure the time you're spending in meetings is productive. It's about making sure you're respectful of people's time. So make sure you're using chat, make sure you're recording, so that if someone can't join for one reason or another, they have to take care of their kids at that time, they have the ability to go back and listen into that recording to see what they missed. Make sure that ahead of time, I can go in for a meeting scheduled tomorrow, go into the chat for that meeting and tag people to say, hey, make sure that you've read through these documents beforehand, before we get to the meeting, because we only have 30 minutes scheduled for this, and we don't want to spend the first 20 reading, having to read through something that we should have read ahead of time. You make the most of the meeting environment that Teams gives you. Again, being inclusive, using your video, using things like background images or blur to make sure that, if you've got people running around the background, kids, if you're working from your bedroom, whatever it is, that, you're making it your environment, you're customizing it for your environment. Again, keep track of that mute button. You want to make sure that, just like in a meeting and you're face to face, that you're giving people the opportunity to talk, but you're also making sure that, you're giving them the courtesy. And, people, you always hear about this coffee shop and people don't have their, aren't muted. You hear the dog barking because the mailman or the UPS man or FedEx came to the front door. Make sure you have that. I know that's something I'm very conscious of working from home all the time. Use chat, use notes within the meeting, create a follow-up take all these things and put them together within the hub that Teams is, to follow up and make sure that you're keeping track of any action items, keeping track of any follow-ups past that meeting. Because sometimes we say, yes, we're going to agree to do X, Y, and Z. You have tools like Planner that very easily integrate into Teams. There are other third-party apps like Monday and Trello that can keep track of those to-dos. There's also Microsoft To Do. There's so soon coming something called Tasks that will be a plugin into Teams. All these things are there for you to track those actions and track those tasks, and make sure that you have the documents set up within the document library tied to that team. All these things utilize that technology to make it efficient. And then the last thing is, within Teams, a lot of people say, well, there's so much. I'm on so many teams. I've got so many chats, all these things that are, being presented to me. How do I go through and how do I get the most out of it? Well, you have the ability to customize your own view, right? If you're on a team, but you're only a small member of that team, you can move that down the list, or you can even hide it if you only need to participate once a year, a couple times a year. You can move those teams that you are most frequently active in to the top, so they're always there and you can always click on it. You don't have to go searching through them. Contacts. I know I have in my contact list, in my chat history, those people that I frequently interact with, I have them pinned to the top, so I don't have to go to the search bar and find them when I need to send them an instant message or send them a document. They're right there, they're accessible, I click on it, I go, and I'm not wasting time with that search. So those are, make it customized to what fits your needs to make you the most productive. So what I focus
Jeremy,
on, yes, go ahead, Ron.
Just two things. I want to ask one question. And the other thing is, again, another reason why we need to migrate from Zoom to Teams is some of the audio quality. I might suggest if you could just turn off your video, because I think there were just a few instances where it got a little choppy, and that'll ensure that we could hear you a little clearly, or more clearly, because the video won't take up some of the limited bandwidth. So if you don't mind doing that, I know you're pretty clean shaven, and I appreciate that you've got a little grow. But one other question someone did have before you start in the security was, I'm assuming the answer is yes, but does Teams work with other Microsoft software, such as if you install Office directly in the traditional way and aren't an Office 365 customer? That was one question that came up.
So Teams is an app you can download directly from the website. It is not something that you need Office for. Does it integrate with Office? Yes. If you're using, there are differences in the capabilities and the integrations between Teams and the Office Pro Plus version that comes with Office 365, with the Office 365 subscription, or just the traditional Office 2016, 2019 versions. I would like to say that Teams would integrate, so if I have a document open and I'm doing co-authoring in the desktop version of Word, in Pro Plus, there's a button where I can see who's doing it, and I can automatically hit chat, and it opens up a chat window with those users who are doing it in real time. I believe that you can do that in the traditional versions of Office, but I would have to go back and check on that to be 100% sure.
So for this and any other questions, I'll want to turn it back over to Jeremy. I will monitor these, and if we can't get to any specific question in the next half an hour, just email me at rgerber@angelpeak.com, and I'll make sure we answer these in the future in the next day or so.
Thanks, Ron. Yeah, and I'm happy to answer some in the future as well. I can give my contact out at the end, or my email out. I'll try and leave a few minutes towards the end to answer any questions in the window, but I did want to shift the conversation now towards the security piece of it, and how we have focused, not just with Teams, but across the platform, within Azure, within our business applications and our modern workplace pillars. Security is the foundation for all of those things. And we make sure that the Teams environment is a secure place, so that people inside and outside your organizations have the right access, but have the access according to your policies. You want to make sure that identities are protected, data is protected, to make sure that they don't leave your environment. Because nowadays, when you're talking about something like an Office 365 or SaaS applications, These are internet-facing applications. You want to make sure the data doesn't leave either on purpose or accidentally those boundaries of those SaaS applications. And so we give you the capability to put controls around that. We give you the capability to make sure if you're a healthcare organization, if you're a financial institution, that if you're a government entity, that you can put together the necessary components of our security and compliance tools to meet your regulatory requirements, HIPAA, IRS 1075, any SEC regulations, all those things that go into place that you need to make sure you as an organization are complying to, and teams and our security foundations and our platforms give you that ability. Our commitment, and I've actually in here pasted at the bottom, it's a link that we put out beginning of this month. There was a lot of news and press because everyone had moved to Zoom and Google Meet and Teams around the security. You heard of Zoom bombing. Well, we put out statements from our corporate vice president, Jared Spataro, who's our CVP for M365, a statement for our end user community and for IT professionals around our commitment to the privacy and security that we build into Microsoft Teams. So we are, by design, safeguarding your privacy. We are making sure that you have the things to control in the platform to control your identity and account information. And we'll go into these in a little more detail, but all of these things, again, are at the core of how we feel we need to provide the end users and businesses the ability to manage the security and manage the controls and the compliance within Teams and within the other services and platforms that we offer to companies. I encourage you to read, if you get a chance to read those two articles. I think it very well lays out what our position is, and where our position has always been, is that security is at the forefront of everything that we do to gain your trust and to keep your trust within our platforms. So the first thing we'll talk about is safeguarding privacy. Right? We'll never use your data. One of the things I heard about in the previous one when I joined a little bit halfway through, was customer lockbox. Right? That's another thing that we put in place that gives you the ability to provide even enhanced capabilities around protecting and preserving your data to make sure that no one has access to it besides you. And if someone does need access, that is all audited and that it is all approved through your organizations and the right custodians within your organization. We don't track participants in meetings. We don't track anything when it comes to, well, I'm in a meeting, but I can tell someone so-and-so is sending off emails, so they're not really paying attention. We don't track any of that, right? We make sure that you have the platform to do what you need to do, and collaborate the way you want to collaborate, the way you would do any normal meeting in person, right? Any normal small group in person at the office. We want to make sure that we take measures to keep your data restricted to just those people who need to have access to it. And we carefully define on our end, this was a big thing in some cases, in the past couple of years, where you hear about police wanting to get into data on encrypted iPhones and other places like that. Well, we have strict policies within our CELA organization that say we will do X, Y, and Z, but it has to be a strict. There's strict things laid on. I'm not a legal expert or lawyer by any stretch of the imagination, but I did have an incident come up with a customer. It wasn't around Teams, but it had to do with some phishing where they got breached and they actually lost and transferred a good sum of money to a bad actor. Well, we came back and we said, well, we need X, Y, and Z laid out to make sure that we don't just give them access to anything just because they said they lost it. They have to put out the legal guidelines and the legal documents to say we will do this and we will adhere to that according to the law. But we're going to make sure that we are keeping data private and not just saying, people have it because they say they got breached, right? We have to have those rules in place. We have transparency reports, we have regulatory reports, and I'll get to the compliance at the end, that we post to make sure that there's access to show you what we're complying to, how we're recertifying those compliances on whatever basis, annual, biannual, that the regulatory body needs. And we don't provide any backdoor access, right? The access is yours to manage. It's yours to give to your employees however you choose to do that. And one of the other pieces of privacy is around video conferencing. You know, I mentioned Zoom bombing earlier. You know, we say, you know, you decide who gets into a Teams meeting. You have the ability to say they wait in the lobby. You have the ability to say they get right in. You have the ability to say that a caller who's calling over the phone can get right in. Access any access to recordings is limited to those who are on the call. So, for example, if this was a smaller meeting and I wanted to record it, well, I'm recording it. The access is automatically given to those on the call. And there's actually when you do the recording, there is a bar that comes up at the top of the Teams chat that says this meeting is being recorded, so everyone is aware. And if someone says, "Hey, I don't want this recorded," they have the ability to see that. They're prompted, and they can speak up that time just within the meeting. If you're on the phone, it actually pops up and says the voice says this meeting is being recorded. So if you're only joining via phone, you know that as well. So we're making sure that the privacy pieces that we're going above and beyond so that users are informed of what's being captured, if it's being captured, and that it's secure to only those people who need to have access to it. Again, we protect your identity, we protect your account. Now, this goes beyond Teams. We make sure we're protecting, and we have, you know, I believe it was mentioned in the presentation before, we have what we call our intelligent security graph, where we get trillions of signals. And this is not just from the business side, but this is also the consumer side. We have a lot of signals coming in from our consumer Outlook.com, our Xbox, as well as everything around Office 365, around Azure, to make sure that we are protecting accounts, we are protecting data, we are putting policies in place to make sure that we can identify and alert you should something happen. We also put other things in place that allow you to configure that yourself. So there's things like we have identity protection that will alert and protect against things like impossible travel, where, you know, I have a user who logged into Teams. I'm in New Orleans, so I've used an example. I have a user logged into Teams in New Orleans, and then 30 minutes later logged in somewhere over in Europe. Well, I'm sorry, no, there's no travel right now. But even if this wasn't, you know, the situation with COVID-19, that's still a pretty odd scenario and impossible scenario to happen. I don't typically log in outside of the country. That's something that can be put in place to alert the security administrators and the IT administrators, say, hey, there may be a compromised account here. You want to lock it down, you want to disable it, you want to enforce multi-factor authentication. Those are all things that you can put in place. The other piece too is today, everyone is working from a lot of different devices. You're working from a laptop, you're working from your tablet, you're working from your phone, you're working from you know, a business center computer. If you travel for some reason, have to print something from your hotel, you're working from you know, grandma's computer that hasn't been updated since, you know, the last decade, still on Windows 7. All these things, you can put the capabilities and the controls in place to say, well, if they want to get to a collaboration platform like Teams, then they need to satisfy, is the device managed? Okay, if it is, do this. If the device isn't managed, enforce multi-factor authentication. If any of these criteria are met, don't let them in whatsoever, or only give them restricted access to these resources. Those are all things that we put in to not only protect your identity and account information, because those environments could be more risky for a bad actor to grab that information, as opposed to, you know, the devices that you manage through your organization through something like Intune or SCCM, or what other, you know, management capabilities and services that are out there. And one of the things, and it's been something I know that was recently released that I've really liked, because it's something we had through Skype, is the ability to communicate between organizations. So with Skype, there was this idea and this notion of federation. Well, within Teams, it's recently been released that you can federate now between organizations. You can have users join Teams in one tenant, and, you know, vice versa. And it all gives you the ability to, again, collaborate not just only with those inside your organization, but those external that you operate, whether it's a vendor, a third party, a client, whatever. Well, within Azure AD, within our security services, we provide the the security piece to make sure that only those authenticated users are given access, and that any policies that you put in place, multi-factor authentication, from only these IP addresses, from network geofencing, that those are in place even for those external users accessing the data and the information of your tenant within Teams. That's all there for you to control. Defending against cybersecurity threats, I mentioned before, we process more than 8 trillion security signals per day. And again, that's from the business side and that's from the consumer side. When it comes to the data is encrypted in transit, it's encrypted at rest, just like all of our technologies. We use technologies such as TLS and SRTP to encrypt all data between our devices and the backend data centers and the platforms. This goes to files, it goes for meetings, it goes for enterprise data. All of those things are encrypted. And if necessary, we allow organizations to decrypt the content for security and compliance obligations through things like e-discovery, which that's one thing that Teams provides, is the ability to do e-discovery against all of the content within Teams, whereas before typically e-discovery was relegated to your Exchange environment. E-discovery now within Office 365 reaches into Exchange, it reaches into Teams, it reaches into SharePoint and OneDrive. It's an all-encompassing solution to grab all of the information necessary defined in that e-discovery case. Data loss prevention, again, it's either accidental or intentional loss of sensitive information. We put things in place to where you can deploy out-of-the-box templates to ensure that financial data, PII data, credit card numbers, social security numbers, health records, those things are controlled and do not leave your tenant, your environment, without specifically securing them, whether it's an encrypted email, whether it's only shared with an authorized user, an authorized domain. Those things are in place within Teams to make sure that you have the ability to share it securely. You're not just locking it down, because the one thing I've always heard from customers, and I always say to customers, if you don't provide them a secure way to do it, they're going to find a way to get around it and do it themselves in an unsecure way. And I think a lot of organizations struggle with that sometimes. And Teams provides that secure way to collaborate with others outside your organization without putting your sensitive data or other individual sensitive data, your customer sensitive data, at risk. One of the things within Office 365 is sensitivity labels. Those have come into Teams, and those you can tag a team to say this is a confidential team, so it has to have the security around it. All those things allow you to put the right rules and restrictions in place, that if it's a R&D team that's that you've set up for a new product that your company's working on, it has a confidential, highly confidential tag around it, which puts certain security measures in place. If you're talking about marketing group or marketing team, whatever that is, that's not necessarily confidential and working on publicly facing documents, images, that can just be of a general or a non-sensitive tag and come with a different set of security rules and restrictions around it. So all those things are in place that allow you to provide the right security to the right data at the right time. And things like advanced threat protection, cloud app security, those are other security features built into our Microsoft 365 environment that help to protect files and users from malware, from phishing, to make sure that you're not taking sensitive documents out of Teams and putting them into an unsanctioned location like a Dropbox, a Google Drive, some other file sharing or file storage system. We have those capabilities in place to make sure the data, again, stays within your tenant, and if it does leave your tenant, is left in a predefined and secure way. And one of the last things I'll get to, and reference this earlier, is we support 90 plus regulations and internal compliances within not just Microsoft 365 and Teams, but across all of our services. If you haven't been to our Security Trust Center, I would highly recommend you go there. It's where we put all of our audit reports, all of our compliance reports, everything that we have within our regulatory compliance, and all the work that we do to make sure we comply with things like HIPAA. GDPR is a big one. If you have any international or any offices or employees in the EU, FedRAMP, SOX, FERPA for education, we have all of those documents listed in our trust center. We make sure that we have that at your fingertips. So all of a sudden, if you're using Teams, which a lot of organizations are now, and you have an audit, you can go back and say, this platform is certified, and here's how we've configured the platform to make sure the data remains private and remains secure. We make sure that we have information barriers to allow conflict of interest. So we make sure that you can configure policies to prevent individuals from talking with other companies. So that I say you can only talk and collaborate with users from these companies over Teams, and invite them as guest account or guest users into your team. That's something that your security team or your compliance team, whatever, has the ability to put in place to ensure that you don't have users going off and saying, they're fine, bring them in. Well, we know they're not fine because they're a competitor in this product, and that person may not just necessarily know about that, even though they have the best of intentions. In which, in most cases, people do have the best of intentions when it comes to things like a data leakage or some sort of privacy issue, that they want to do something, they want to help out, but they just didn't realize that what they were doing was compromising the security and the privacy of the data that's within their team's environment, or just within their environment in general. I mentioned e-discovery. You have discovery cases that come about from a legal standpoint. You have other cases that come about from whatever it is, just internal audits, from other compliant regulatory audits, and you need to pull that data. E-discovery gives you the ability to grab that. Our legal holds, our in-place holds allow you to select users, select sites to make sure that data isn't deleted if you have some sort of audit and you are afraid that, or investigation on a user or a group of users because you think there's something that they're doing wrong. You can always put those holds in place so that they don't have the ability to delete the information you're trying to get a hold of to build that case or to turn over for the regulatory bodies and what they're going to do with it. One thing I haven't mentioned is retention. Within Office 365, Microsoft 365, we have this whole notion of retention, just like you have it within, if you're running Exchange, whether on-prem or Exchange Online, retention. How long do emails are retained? How long does your, HIPAA, GDPR, FERPA, all of those compliances, IRS 1079, they have CGIS, they have retention policies built around them. Well, if you're an organization that has to comply to them, we have the ability to put that retention policy not just around email, but around all of the data within Teams too, around chat history, around files and documents, around other pieces and other apps and workflows that are built into Teams. We can put that retention in place so that, again, if you're ever audited, you have the ability to go back and say, yep, I've got this in place. Here's all the data. Here's how I'm meeting this. And hopefully it's a, yep, check the box and you're still good. We have that. We give you that. Again, the one thing I'll say is that with all of our platform teams in particular in Office 365, we give you the car, we give you the keys to the car. It comes with all the bells and whistles that you want, but it's up to you to look at how you need to use those bells and whistles to know how to drive it, to know how to use it, and to know how to operate it according to the way that you want and your organization needs. We give you all of that. It's your data. We treat it as your data. However you need to handle it, however you need to secure it, that's up to you, and we give you the tools to manage that. So the last slide I have, just some additional resources and links here. We do have, if you don't have Microsoft Teams today, we are giving it away for free, a 6-month trial to support remote work. If you are a Microsoft customer and know who either your account executive is, if you have an account technology strategist, some modern workplace specialist, whatever, contact Microsoft. They'll be able to put that in for you. I've already done it for a couple of my customers. Some other things on security and tips for working remotely. And with the last 5 minutes, I'll leave it for questions. And I just want to say thank you to Ron and thank you for the opportunity to talk today.